Hey everyone, I'm Jen and I own a veterinary technician relief business.
And I'm Michelle. I own a veterinary technician mobile house call business.
And you are
And you are
listening
listening
to
to
Endless
Endless
Journeys,
Journeys,
the Vet
the
Tech
Vet Tech
Odyssey
Odyssey podcast.
podcast. In this podcast, we will be discussing and meeting with credentialed technicians who have created their own path with business ownership within the veterinary space.
Our goal is to help inspire burnt out vet techs before they leave the industry altogether through our stories and the stories of other vet tech business owners.
Hey everyone, you're tuning in to part 2 of our latest episode. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, we highly recommend checking it out first to get the full context and enjoy the entire conversation. Both parts are packed with insights and stories that you won't want to miss. Thanks for joining us, and let's dive back in.
Jen, what's your scoop?
So mine was a mixture of like me being relief and also just in general of when it's a good time to say goodbye to a clinic. Just because I feel like if there's people that are listening who want to start their own business and they're trying to figure out like if it's right for them, you're working full time in a clinic and you're having these thoughts, and maybe some of the things that I mention on the list could be that eye-opener of like, okay, that's a little bit how I feel. So, and even just talking about like if you're working at a really toxic workplace, or, all the way to just even if it's the best workplace that you've ever been, but you're just still not quite feeling fulfilled kind of thing. So I have a couple of different examples there. And then I can talk a little bit about, because since I've done relief, I have not had a lot of places that I've said, okay, I'm done here for good. So I don't have any current examples of that, but I have examples of what I would do in certain situations. And I would be like, yeah, I probably wouldn't deal with that kind of thing.
What are
So,
they? I want to
all
hear it.
right.
Just
So,
knowing you, it's got to be good. Like, you're solid. So I know it's got to be like good reasonings. Because Jen, if you don't know Jen very well, she's solid. Like, she's got to have some good reasons.
all right. So, when to say goodbye to a clinic, my first thing on the list is when the clinic, within the clinic, there's bad communication between basically all of the staff. So, if there's not good communication between manager versus the staff, or manager versus manager in different departments, or even like if you have a head manager and then you have supervisors underneath, and there's not good communication between any of them, or if policies are being put in place but there's been no communication to the rest of the staff, and so the rest of the staff is like, well, where are these policies coming from? Why are we implementing these policies? And you're basically just saying this is just how it is, and no questions asked. That, I think, is not a great place to be. I have worked in clinics like that before, or I've worked in clinics where I've spoken to a supervisor, and then I speak to my manager a couple weeks down the line and I say, hey, I'm just following up with what I spoke to with so-and-so. And they're like, oh, I didn't hear anything about that. What, like communication, like, I mean, and Michelle, we've already talked about how good communication is, and how it works well within any aspect of owning a business. And the amount of clinics that I've worked at where the communication is horrible is just sad and
Ugh.
disappointing, and it's so easily fixable. So that is one of my reasons of saying goodbye to a clinic, is if there's bad communication. And there might be people out there that say, "Oh, well, communication can be fixed." It can be, when people
Yeah.
are aware that the communication isn't good. But there's so many clinics that aren't even aware that they have horrible communication within their entire clinical staff.
And there's CE on communication everywhere, y'all. Like,
Yeah.
there's free everywhere in communication. Like, get your communication streamlined. Even like what, a white chalkboard or a marker dry erase board, like new rule on the dry erase board right by the clock, like
Oh yeah, when I worked, gosh, this was a long time ago when I got a new job and then they put me as head technician assistant. And my very first thing that I said was like, our communication is horrible. We need to have a whiteboard in the back for all of us so that if anything changes or if there's anything that needs to be communicated between shifts, it'll be on the whiteboard. And then at one of my emergency clinics, the communication for rounds was not it wasn't being done appropriately, or people would leave before they even were able to round. Like you'd be like, oh, like you'd be rounding with somebody and they'd be like, oh, I don't actually know anything about this patient, but so and so did, and they already walked out the door. That was so frustrating for me, and it would make me so angry. And and then they would implement rules of like, well, people need to stay and they need to round. People didn't do that, and they didn't enforce it either. So
oof.
I implemented something or people just didn't get along either, and they just didn't want to speak to each other. So they just wouldn't get rounded, which again, so frustrating, and patients are suffering because of it. So I implemented a rounds sheet where I literally wrote everything down that needed to be talked about. And I basically said, you need to fill out this sheet before your shift is over. We still want
Good.
you to talk to people. Like, we still need to round, but this also needs to be here. And it needs to be in writing because people can forget things too. So that was also something that I implemented at one of the clinics that I had worked at. So to me, that's just, it's really important. And if it's not there, then from my experience, things do not go well and they don't end well. So
Relatable. Yeah.
that that was one. um I also have lack of accountability for repeated misconduct.
Ooh.
So if things are happening and things have been brought up multiple times and things are not getting addressed, or people such as the managers and supervisors are not taking full accountability of the misconduct, and they're just saying, and they're kind of gaslighting you a little bit, where they're just saying, well, this is on you, or they're just brushing it under the rug, or they're making you seem like you're too sensitive. Again, that's not going to end well. It's not going to go well, and it's not going to end well. So that's another one on my list. And then I also have on here experiencing bullying and potential legal violations among your bosses or other staff members. And I think that this is unfortunately really common in the veterinary field. I don't know, Michelle, if you've personally had issues with this, but I personally have had issues with it. I have seen people have issues with it, where there are certain people among the staff members that bullied other staff members, and they're allowed to get away with it
Seen it.
because of how much money they're making for the clinic, or that's the excuse. You know,
Oh, I never heard that excuse. That's a new one, though. They're
yeah,
making me money,
so
so, oh,
yeah, so
hell.
uh DVMs, even technicians, I've brought up being bullied before by a technician, and I have seen DVMs bully before, and there's always been a problem, and it keeps getting brought up, but I don't think it actually gets brought up to that person. And I've had it kind of be thrown back at me, or I've seen other people be like, oh, well,
Ugh.
this is a DVM that's worked here for a really long time, or this is a DVM that has a lot of respect amongst our clients. So it kind of doesn't matter how they're making you feel.
Yeah.
You just have to deal with it.
You have to bend over and take it up like a lady.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're told. And that is bullying. I, I personally feel pretty lucky. I have not experienced much bullying from within a clinic. Most of mine was done in the corporate side, not
Mm.
the actual like floor side. But I don't know if I told you this, but I actually witnessed a technician and a receptionist get into a physical fight. Yeah, that was cool. Not I shouldn't say that was cool. It was bad. It was bad. The tension was building for weeks, y'all. I mean, we all knew like something was in the air. And the girl who basically thought she ran the front, but she didn't. And the girl who basically thought she ran the back, who didn't, kept on butting heads. I was nowhere in this conflict. Neither was a lot of people, just between these two girls. But one technician and one receptionist, we had like one of those swinging doors. The technician pushed the receptionist through that door and kept on swinging the door, swinging the door, and beating her with the door. And I should not be laughing. I am not laughing because nobody should get hurt at work. But both these girls were itty bitty, like tiny, like short little girls. And they're both like skinny, like little, just, they were screaming and yelling. And oh, Lord. Yeah, it was insane. And that was actually that was my last clinic I worked at. And we were all sad. The receptionist was a little bit of a bully. I didn't care for her. She didn't bother me one way or the other. I stayed out of her way. I also stayed out of the girl in the back who thought she was the boss. I stayed out of her way. I just stayed out of everybody's way there. And I kind of felt bad for the receptionist, even though she was kind of an asshole. But the office manager and the doctor tried like hell to save the technician from getting fired when she should have been fired. And she was fired, but corporate was like, no, she needs to go, respectfully so. And I felt bad for the receptionist because she was violated physically and nobody stood up for her. But again, she was kind of a jerk. I mean, both of them were two crazy girls who thought they were the boss of, boss of the North, boss of the South. And they came together at the mutual cross line and war broke out between that door. And it was freaking nuts. But yeah, so I've seen it. It didn't involve me. I mean, truth be told, I probably would have taken either one of those girls on a fight. So
I've had an experience of being in the surgery room and somebody, I'm not going to go too deep into what happened, but I can tell you the end of it, where she walked into the surgery room after she had been talking behind my back to the doctor that I had worked for that day. And then that doctor, who was also not very nice and was known for bullying, came and told me what she said. And she was like, "Oh, did you hear that so-and-so said this about you?" And I was like, I'm trying to explain to you the situation. And people are just sitting here and and this is when I was a baby tech. And they were just sitting there talking crap about me. And I was in the surgery room and I was talking to one of the other technicians and I was crying and I was really upset. And I'm like, I don't know how to handle this. I feel like I'm in high school again, or middle school. Honestly, middle school. I didn't deal with that crap in high school. And no, high school was so much better than even what I've experienced with work people. But she walked into the surgery room and I just started screaming at her. I started screaming. I started cussing. I was just like, get out of here. You're just gonna, because I think like she walked in and she made a passive aggressive comment and I just exploded. And I started screaming at her and I started like going after her. And I was tiny then. Like I didn't work out then. Like she totally could have kicked my ass. And I was like going after her. And I remember the other technician was like trying to hold me back. And she was like, "Jen, you need to calm down." And no one had ever seen me like that before because I was nice, sweet, little, quiet Jen who I just, I was then. I'm not like that anymore.
No. But you're still sweet and nice and kind. But
I can be, but I also can be scary and intimidating, which is another thing that I've heard lately.
I can see that one too.
But yeah, no, I just started screaming at her and like we got into it and and I mean there were words said. I definitely didn't say nice things to her. She definitely didn't say nice things to me. Basically agreed to disagree and basically I was like I don't like you. I've never liked you. Stay away from me, basically. And her best friend worked there and her best friend had heard about it. And then her best friend obviously started bullying me as well. And then she started giving me the silent treatment to the point where literally she just ignored me and pretended like I wasn't there. So if like I needed help with something, she just ignored me. And then like vice versa. Like sometimes the doctors would ask that specific person to come help me, and then they just ignored them. And I honestly didn't last very much longer after that because it was one of those situations where I was experiencing bullying and I wasn't getting back up. And I had reported it. And I remember just basically being told that I wasn't the only one with the issue, and that's just how they
Oh.
are. That's just
Oh,
how they
that's just
are.
how they are.
And
Mm.
unfortunately, nothing can be done about it. And they are a really good staff member otherwise. And I just have to deal with it. And then when I reported the other person basically ignoring me, um, there was some disbelief there. They kind of didn't believe me that it was actually happening. And so again, like I said, yeah, I left not long after that, and then the supervisor that I had told that a couple years later, so that person who gave me the silent treatment became the practice manager of that clinic not long after I left, and she chased everybody out. Everyone left, and I remember my supervisor, who I was still talking to at the time, was like, "I'm so sorry, I didn't believe you." She said
Oh,
she definitely had a wool
epiphany?
over all of our eyes. And I told her, I was like, "Well, I'm not gonna lie about things like
Yeah.
that." And she's like, "No, I mean, it's not like I thought that you were lying. I just thought maybe you were being a little too sensitive, you
Oh,
know?"
yeah, that word gets thrown out a lot. A little too sensitive, you're taking it to
Mhm.
heart,
Yeah.
it's just how they are, which I feel like just excuses the bully even worse. Oh, that's just how he is or that's how she is. No, well,
Yeah.
they suck, so get rid of them because you're just gonna lose a lot more staff. Like,
Right.
yeah.
So, yeah. So, definitely
Ugh.
I've had experiences like that, and again, once it got to that point, I ended up just leaving, and you cannot handle the bullying, obviously. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm perfect. I've been accused of bullying as well in the clinic, and I have thought about it, and I won't deny it. I didn't realize that I was bullying at the time, but now that I'm aware of it, I know that I need to do better and I need to be better. So, that is definitely something that I think we've all experienced. And if you haven't, then yay, good for you. I'm so happy for you because it's not nice.
Yeah, and would you let
Um,
us know where you're working at, by the way, so we can send other technicians there who are looking for jobs?
yeah.
Because that sounds like, somewhere over the rainbow.
Right. And then that kind of puts me to my next one where it says if you are facing retaliation rather than support for speaking up. So it kind of just a little again goes back. I don't think I ever experienced retaliation. I'm not going to go there. I but I also didn't really receive support either. But I know that there are some clinics where people are really afraid. They really are afraid to speak up. And I know that I've seen it on all of our, like, on our anonymous vet tech groups a lot where people are afraid to speak up about their managers or certain DBMs for the betterment of the patient or for bullying or for doing illegal things. And we are afraid to speak up because we are afraid of retaliation. And it's one of those things where if you are truly afraid of retaliation for speaking up, that's a sign, man.
That's a
You
sign.
cannot work there.
No, you gotta get out. Somebody once said at a clinic setting, that clinic is more likely to change you than you are to change it. I
Right.
I saw that in some random vet tech group, and that stuck with me.
Mhm.
Like, that's that situation. What'd you say?
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, but it's still not easy because then you have to, and then there's other people that are like, "Oh, well, how do I know that I'm just not gonna walk into another clinic that's the same?" You don't. But it's another situation of there are clinics out there that aren't like that. You just have to try to find them, and you really don't know. You have no idea how good the clinic is until you actually start working there for a certain period of time because they're all
Yeah.
going to seem like sunshine and rainbows and they're going to play it out like that because they need staff. But after a while, you can tell after being somewhere for a certain amount of time whether it's the same as where you came from or whether it truly is something different.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's like dating almost. Like, when you first
Oh,
meet
yeah.
somebody, you get the butterflies and you can't wait to see them again, and
Mhm.
it's just wonderful. And like, a year into it, you're like, That is a cheating scumbag mother. It's just like
Mhm.
at a clinic. It's like dating, just like it's like mobile work. It's like dating, and you got to figure each other out. And you don't usually people don't put their shit show on display until several months after they meet you.
Right.
you
And
know,
just because you and I know that we talked about this in a different podcast episode too, where people are really afraid and they feel like, okay, well, now I made my bed, now I need to sleep in it. But we don't want people to feel that way. And I know we've talked about the job hopping where it was looked at as negatively before, but now you don't know. You don't know if a job is going to work out for you until you work there for a little bit. And it's okay if it doesn't work out, or it's okay if you're like, you know what, this is not a good fit for me. I think I need to go somewhere else. Those are all things that are okay. And I'm going to say that I've been that person where where I left a job and I worked there and I wasn't happy. And I said, well, I made my bed. Now I need to lay in it. And no, that's,
mm,
we got to have different mindsets there. And it's the same thing.
yeah.
So that was my other situation. This is one that's been interesting. Being told that you are not being positive enough in a toxic clinic culture. It
Ugh.
is not your responsibility to be positive. It is their responsibility to bring the positive culture in.
I can dig that. I mean, so in this case, I just
So,
want to make sure I'm reading this
and
right.
I think
So
this goes,
I'm sorry.
so, okay, we gotta go back. So this goes back to one of the Chill and Spill episodes that we did where somebody had brought up the positive culture and saying that we're just not positive enough in veterinary medicine. And I think after having some thoughts about it, it was something that really stuck out in my brain when I was starting to brainstorm for this podcast of literally being told you're not being positive enough when you walk in the door. So you're the problem. But if you're not being positive enough when you walk in the door at the clinic, is that really saying something about you, or is it saying something about the clinic that
the
you're
clinic.
working at? Because if you love the people that you work with, and if it's a positive culture and it's a positive vibe and it's a good energy vibe, and you know that you're going to be fully staffed, then
Ah,
you don't usually have a problem walking into work and being happy that you're there.
no,
But if you know that there's been problems, you know that there's certain people that you're going to be working with that maybe aren't going to be happy, or maybe that are going to be frustrated, or maybe you're really short staffed, or maybe, maybe there's just been problems lately. And then you don't walk in and then you start being told that you're the problem because you're not being positive enough. To me, that's a little bit like of gaslighting there.
yeah, no, I think
So
that
I
is.
totally understand that Chill and Spill episode a little bit more. And I totally understand that comment that was made a little bit more just from brainstorming from this alone, where I was like, oh, I totally get it from that perspective now.
Yeah, and drawing back on my when I worked in the clinic, I I know that there's clinics where, like you said, fully staffed, you got the right team. I'm pulling into work and I'm sunshine. I got my coffee. I'm listening to my music and I'm strolling and happy because I'm about ready to work with my homegirl.
Yep,
Like
I've been
yeah.
there.
So yeah, yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Of like you walk in the door, you're upset. Well, because I know we're gonna be short staffed. This person's an asshole. This person's a jerk. You guys failed this, and this. So yeah,
Or so and so doesn't hold their weight
yeah.
usually. And so now I'm going to have to take on more.
Yep. So no, I feel like that's more of a like you said, that's like a gaslighting thing. I feel
Yeah.
for sure.
So that was another thing that I added to my list. And then I also, just to add on to that too, of, are you crying or dreading walking into the clinic before your shift almost every single day? I've heard some people tell me where they start to cry on their way to work, or they sit in their car and they cry, or they just sit in their car and they're just dreading the day of having to even just walk into the clinic. And
Uh,
I mean, that's a sign.
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
a
if you're
sign.
doing it every day, I mean, sometimes women can be hormonal. Um, I don't know men as much how they feel about, from their perspective of when they know that they need to leave a clinic, but I know women are pretty hormonal. So sometimes we have our good days and we have our bad days. Sometimes we just don't feel like being there. But I mean, if this is every single day, then that's different.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was another thing that I basically had on there on top of that. And then obviously high turnover staffing amongst quality employees. So if you
Yep.
have really, really good employees and something changes and then all your good employees are leaving, or say that you're hiring on really good employees, but the good employees just aren't wanting to stay, that's also a really telling situation there.
Yeah. That I feel like that is like if you walk into a clinic and if you're relieving for them and like all the techs have been there for like 3 months, like I feel
Yeah.
like that'd be a major red flag. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I would say most of the clinics I do relief for, um, they have long-term staff there, and they absolutely love it there, and the
Oh,
culture is really
good.
good. There is one clinic I work for that has really high staff turnover. Very,
Huh.
very high.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's all I have to say about that.
We'll leave it at that.
I obviously I still do relief there, or sometimes I need to take breaks from that clinic a little bit, and they do need a lot of help for a lot of reasons. And because I do relief there, I I don't want to speak too much on it, but just to say that there's a reason. So,
I get that.
we're
Yeah.
going to leave that there.
I don't think you're
um
Ooh.
so my next reason of when it could be time to say goodbye to a clinic is say that again, now we're not talking about toxicity, we're not talking about a really bad, high turnover clinic. We're just say that you are really happy there, but you're bored and you aren't as excited to go to work as you were anymore, and you do not have those growth opportunities. Like you've reached your peak at that clinic as far as this is the most that I'm going to be able to learn here. So you feel stuck. There's no room to advance your skills or no more opportunities to learn those new skills or to learn new techniques. And in a way, you are underutilized because there are so many things that technicians can do that a lot of licensed technicians don't do or they don't know how to do because they weren't given the opportunity to learn those skills. Um, I think that was something that happened to me with one of the emergency clinics that I worked for. It was, and I still adore everyone who works there. I still adore the owner. I literally, you know, texted her the other day, but that was really hard for me. That was a really hard time for me to let go of that clinic and say goodbye to that clinic because it was one of those situations where I was bored. I wasn't excited really to go to work anymore, and I wasn't getting the growth that I was wanting anymore. And I knew that there were a lot more skills that I could learn, but I didn't have the opportunity to at that particular clinic. And that was a hard decision for me to make, but I knew that it was time for me to let go. And then I
That
did.
yeah, that sounds hard.
Yeah. And then I learned way more new skills to add on to my resume after that. Yeah, we weren't doing manual platelet estimates. We weren't doing manual diffs. The technicians weren't allowed to, or not that we weren't allowed to, but we weren't given the opportunities to do like cystocentesis or even place urinary catheters, things like that. And or even placing NG tubes. The doctors were the ones that placed NG tubes. So I had to leave in order to
Better yourself.
advance my skills.
Yeah.
So that was
Uh,
another thing that I've done that I can say was time. What that was hard though. I mean,
it
with every
sounds
other
hard.
clinic, with every other
It's
clinic, it was
yeah.
kind of easy. The bullying, that was easy, or,
Yeah.
or even just going to relief, that was easy. But saying goodbye to that clinic was really, really hard because that was like a true family. And that was not a family in a toxic way at all. That was
That hurts.
true, true family. They helped me. That clinic literally helped me through a whole life transition of when I went through a really hard divorce and really bad separation. And they were the ones who brought me back to life.
Mm.
And so when I went through that whole life transition, a lot of things changed in my life. And then I realized that I had to leave and it wasn't easy. And I think I hurt a lot of people's feelings when I did. I remember one of my friends who never cries, like she's only cried like 2 or 3 times in her whole life. And when she found out I
Oh,
was
wow, I wish
leaving,
I had
she
that.
cried. Like, she cried, and she started, like, and she found out in a really kind of bad way. It was a surprise. I was on the phone with, like, we were all hanging out at the park, and we were all having drinks, and then I got a call from the person who from the other clinic who was offering me the job, and they offered me the job right then and there, and I accepted it, and she's like, "Wait, you're leaving?" And so, yeah, that was not okay. And
You can't help that though. That yeah, you weren't
yeah,
expecting to get that call at the park. Come on,
yeah. And then, of course, then the owner of the facility, she is the type of person where she's not very emotional, and like, she doesn't really like to hug people. She doesn't really like to, like, she doesn't like the touchy-feely part. But then on my last day when I left, she was like, "Can you give me a hug?" And I was like, "Yes."
yeah. Of course.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was hard. It was definitely hard, but I knew that it was time. So, yeah, it's never one of those things where sometimes the right thing to do isn't going to feel easy, and it's not going to feel like you have a bunch of peace. But those were the signs for me to know that I had to let go, and I had to move on. And then, like I said, with underutilization, are your skills being used to their full potential or close to their full potential? That's something to think about as well. If that's bugging you, then go find somewhere that will do that, because there are a ton of places that allow you to use your skills. And I know, like, some people be like, "Oh, well, I don't live close to a place," but if you're licensed, then it's easy. You can move to any state that you want to that will utilize your skills. That's the blessing of being licensed, right?
Yeah, yeah. You get to
So,
do a lot more in certain states.
mhm.
Hmm.
So, um
I think that was a good one. I just want to say that was. I feel like that subject is not talked about enough. Is when it's hard to leave a clinic, not easy. Like that
yeah.
sounded really hard for you, just because you liked everybody. It was a good culture, but oh yeah, and I don't think a lot of techs think like that either. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like that's eye opening. Is really eye opening.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to bring up. and and then, I wanted to bring up to the y- burnout, right? So are you experiencing burnout? Does that mean that you need to change your clinic, or does that just mean you need to change things that are going on in your personal life? But burnout can also be a sign that you need to change your clinic, but not always. And then, obviously, inadequate pay. Are you getting paid what you're worth? Are you getting decent benefits? Are you getting any benefits at all? And that was something else that I just wanted to add in there too. If you have been fighting for a certain amount of pay for a certain time, and I don't know what your experience is with this, Michelle, but I know that with my experience of every time I left a job, my pay got significantly more than at jobs where I had stayed with them for almost a decade, as
Oh
far
yeah,
as that raise. So that's something to think about as well. Is Am I sitting here encouraging job hopping? Not
yeah,
necessarily. I mean, and that's what it's
yeah.
like, I mean, in a way, yes, but things are not the way that they used to be. Loyalty
No.
does not mean what it used to mean, and we've talked about this in past podcasts as well. But they've kind of proven that when you stay at a place for a couple of years, learn all that you have to learn. All right, I've reached my peak here. Now it's time for me to move on and me to learn new skills, because that's basically whatever I'm trying to do. Whenever I'm leaving a clinic and I'm going to another clinic, it's because I'm trying to learn and I'm trying to grow, and I'm trying not to stay stuck with where I am. And the more skills that you learn, the more that they're going to pay you, and the more that they're going to be willing to pay you. Because
Because you're more viable.
if you're working at a general practice, and you haven't been utilizing your skills, and they haven't been utilizing your skills, and you haven't been pushing to learn more skills or been pushing yourself out of that comfort zone, then when you do work at another clinic, they're going to be like, "Well, why do you deserve to have more pay than what this place paid you? Because you don't
Oh,
know these new skills, or you don't know these particular skills."
that's
So,
interesting. I never would have thought about that.
mhm. Yeah. So push for learning those new skills, push for being utilized, because the more skills you know, the better pay that you're going to get, in
Yeah,
my experience.
I could see that. Yeah, I've had this conversation with Jen. I was always happy doing the vaccine rooms, doing the boring stuff that other techs didn't like it. I think I found my challenges was getting those owners who normally don't do prevention to get them to do more prevention. I feel like that was my chase, to constantly get better and better at. But other than that, like my tech skills, like my catheter skills, my blood work, all that jazz was always decent.
Hmm.
Like I was average, run of the mill. Like I was good. I wasn't excellent, but I didn't even think about that, Jen. That whole, like, if you go on to a new job, they're gonna be like, "You didn't learn this? You don't know this?"
Hmm.
And I feel like in some areas it's to be expected. Not every clinic will utilize their techs to the fullest extent, and clinics will certainly stretch out techs. But I never really thought about that. You'd want to learn more so that way when you do move on, you are not setting yourself up for a clinic to look at you and be like, "Oh, I thought you would have known how to do that."
Well, and I've always been really transparent too. If I didn't know the certain skills, I would say, I don't know this skill, but I would like to learn it. So if you want to teach me these skills, I'm here to learn. And that's what I want. That's why I'm here, because I
Hmm.
want to learn these skills. Or if you're at a clinic and they're not utilizing you, then start pushing to learn how to do these skills. Ask the doctor and be like, hey, can I do the cysto? Can you teach me how to do a cysto? Or if you need to obtain urine and the doctor doesn't have enough time, hey, can I learn how to do this? Can I watch you? Will you start trusting me to do this if you don't have the time? Or if the CBC came back and the platelets look off, and there's always that question of, oh, well, was it a good stick? And you can either say yes or no or whatever, but you can also be like, well, I could just do a quick platelet estimate and we can find out. It doesn't take that long. So you will always have opportunities to learn these skills at these clinics. Sometimes you have to be a little bit pushy. I remember when I was working at one of the emergency clinics, they had a ventilator system, and they were very, very picky on who was allowed to use the ventilator. And I remember asking, well, when are they going to train us on the ventilator? And they said that there was a particular person that had to train you on the ventilator. And it was the criticalist. And my very first surgery I did with her, we were using the ventilator. And I was terrified because I said, well, I don't know how the ventilator works. I haven't been trained on it. And they said, oh, it doesn't matter. She'll just tell you exactly what you need to do. And I remember being like, okay, well, I don't like that. Like, I'll do that, but I want to know myself, and I want to know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I'm fine listening to her, and I will listen to her, but I also am the type of person where I want to know what I'm doing and I want to know why I'm doing it. So the first surgery I did with her, I I did exactly what she told me to do. But then during that surgery, I was asking her questions. I was just asking her all the questions to learn as much as I possibly could. And then I was just kind of waiting, and I was waiting and I was waiting and I was waiting. And it's like, no one is taking the opportunity to teach me how to use this ventilator. So I finally just said, fuck it. And we had @dev. So I looked up the @dev video, and it had the same exact ventilator. So I started doing webinars on how the ventilator works. I started looking up the exact YouTube that has that ventilator and how it works and how you set it up. I started bugging the supervisors who knew how to use that ventilator, and I would just take them aside and say, hey, when you have a free moment, can you help me troubleshoot the ventilator? And can I just show you what I think I know and answer questions? They're like, sure, yeah. And then I eventually was comfortable enough where I'm like, okay, I feel like I know enough. So then when I did surgery with her again, I basically set it all up, and she said, oh, you set it up already? And I said, yep. And she's like, good for you. And I remember after everything happened, she signed me off on the ventilator. So I became one of the people who was able to safely use the ventilator. And I remember saying, and I was like, well, so they kept telling me that somebody was going to train me, and no one ever trained me. And she said, well, we like people to what did they say? To take the initiative. If you want to take, because there had been people that had been working there for
Oh,
years. There had been people that had been working there for years that still hadn't been signed off on the ventilator.
and that's because they didn't take the initiative,
Mm-hmm.
but you did.
Yep.
Ah, interesting. So they were like, they were waiting to see who was going to step up, essentially. Then
Yeah.
I like that. That's kind of
I mean, kind of, but
sneaky.
then I was also kind of irritated because I was
Yeah,
like, when is this going to happen? And then it wasn't happening. And then they were basically like, oh, well, you can use the ventilator with this particular doctor, but that's it. And I was like, well, that's not good enough for me. So, yeah, so I just took the initiative and I figured it out on my own. And I learned and I stepped up and I asked people the right questions. And so sometimes that's what you have to do. Sometimes you cannot wait for somebody to take you under their wing or to mentor you. Sometimes like if you want something bad enough, if you want to learn those skills, you have to step up and you have to ask. And sometimes it'll be harsh and sometimes it'll be from somebody that doesn't trust you and they're going to tell you straight up no. But there are going to be some unicorns out there that are like, yes, yeah, absolutely. It would be so helpful, or especially if a DVM, they'd be like, yeah, it'd be really helpful if I wasn't the only one that was comfortable enough to do this so that it could save up some time for me to do other things.
yeah. Or what
Or
happens if
like,
like you're gone one day and you're the only person who's trained and you had an emergency to where you couldn't show up?
right. So
Yeah.
that's my little story of the day of sometimes you just have to take the initiative and you have to be a little bit pushy if you want to learn how to do things. And maybe you just need to be that person at the clinic that's not utilizing their technicians enough. Maybe you just have to be that person to be like, hey, I think it would be really helpful if we learned how to do this. Is there someone here that would be able to teach us?
Yeah. I like that you just stepped up and you got what you wanted. You stepped up. You're like, no, I'm doing this. And they were like, we're glad you did because
Yeah.
we've been waiting on you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's sneaky but cool. I like
And I
that.
remember even literally having the conversation of like, well, I was waiting, and one of the technicians even said, they're like, well, so and so likes the technicians who take initiative, and they're not going to baby you. So I was like,
Nice.
oh, okay. Well,
I did it. Yeah. So I would say, yeah, long story short, if you are, you're like Jen said, you got to have some growth. I can see we're just becoming stagnant,
hmm
doing the
I mean,
same
and
thing
not
over and over
everybody's
again.
like that, right? Not
Yeah.
everybody's like
I
that.
like
So I'm not
stagnant.
sitting
Yeah.
here trying to preach that to every single person, but to the people who do feel that little stir inside where they're just like, oh, this isn't enough, or I feel like I should be doing more. Those were all of the things that spoke to me. And those were all the reasons why I ended up leaving a clinic. And then I also just want to point out too, um, do they consider your input on your schedule at all? Or
Oh,
do they
nice.
just put you anywhere and you just have to deal with it? Because me personally, I did that for a really long time and I was miserable. And then when I finally was able to speak up about my schedule and was what I needed, and of course not everyone's going to have the perfect schedule every single time, but at least like if you just do you have any input at all? Or they basically say, "No, you have no input. We put you where we put you and you have to deal with it." Or do they work with you a little bit? That's a red flag for me for a clinic.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that too much. I feel like in my younger days, I would have been a little bit too happy to be like, whatever you need, I'm here anytime. Now I'd be like, yeah, I'm not working that. Good luck. Yeah, I feel like there's a basic line of respect that goes on to, hey, Jen, what's your what days do you like having off? Do you like mornings, evenings?
Right.
I feel like you
Or
should have
at,
some input.
right, or at least I feel like especially working in an emergency clinic, I mean, I used to work every single weekend, and I feel like it would have been nice if I would have had like maybe one weekend off a month or one Saturday
Uh,
off a month. Like that, even that little bit would have made
that
me
little
happy
bit.
enough to be like, okay, no, like at least they're trying and they're working with me a little bit. But if they don't, that is something to be said as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. My last clinic, the one I actually told you about where the 2 girls got into the fight where I shouldn't have been laughing, but I was laughing, I guess you had to been there. But my scheduling is, like, one of the reasons why I left is when I walked in, I was like, "My dad is sick. This is the schedule that I need." And they were like, "Hey, these 2 girls are getting into a fight, so we're changing everybody's schedule." And they didn't have any consideration towards anybody, not just myself, but anybody. And that's when I wound up leaving was because I'm like, I need like, I only get one dad, so
Yeah.
sorry. And no consideration was taken upon anybody, not just me, but everybody's schedule got flipped upside down after that. And yeah, that was the reason I left. So I can imagine that being
Yeah,
a
so
heck of a big
everybody
red
got
flag.
punished because of those 2 people.
Oh my
That's
God.
ridiculous. So
Yeah,
everybody
it
got
was,
punished. That's
girl, they got into a
ridiculous.
fight. Not those 2 girls, but a different set of girls got into a fight over parking spots.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. I'm telling you,
Yeah. It,
work is like it is worse than my freaking high school experience. I had no issues in high school. Everyone got along and we all loved each other and it's work can just be different. But
dramatic.
yeah, dramatic.
Dramatic.
Yes. And then I also just wanted to I wanted to just say because when I was doing a little bit of research, I found a article here, which I'll put the link to of the article in the show notes. But it was talking about vet tech turnover, and it said turnover rate is reported range between 23% to 50% in veterinary technicians. And recruiting, hiring, and training new staff can come up to a cost of $10,000 to replace a single staff member. So at the end of the day, when you have all of these reasons to say goodbye to a clinic and nothing's changing, it's hurting them more than it's hurting you.
That's interesting. 10 grand, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like more office managers and DVMs need to have access to that study. It'll probably help them want to do some retention. Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you have people that are leaving, and a lot of times they're just letting people go, and they're not giving in to any of of their insights of what they could do better to make them stay. And it's like,
Yeah.
so
Oh, that is hard. Yeah. Well, did you have anything else on your list?
um no.
You
That was
didn't?
pretty much that yeah, that was pretty much it. And again, it was more focused on like actually leaving a clinic just cuz I've been through that situation so many times and these were all the reasons why I eventually left these clinics. And I don't have a lot of experiences yet being in relief. I haven't had a bad experience of being like, "Oh, okay, I shouldn't work here anymore." The only thing that I can think of off the top of my head right now of why I would leave a clinic would be if I just did not have an overall good experience with the staff. Like if, if the staff members were rude to me or if it just wasn't a good vibe or, sometimes personalities just don't vibe. And
Yeah.
I have not had that situation happen yet. So, but I definitely would. If, like I said, any type of disrespect, if a doctor yelled at me or something like that, or another staff member yelled at me, I probably would not work at that clinic again. Or liability, if there was something that they wanted me to do that was illegal, absolutely not. But that's also in my contract. Or if there's just something, because I mean, I speak up a lot too about what I feel comfortable with and what I don't feel comfortable with. And I know that there was a situation at a clinic where there was an aggressive dog that was in the car and the CSR came back and was like, "So they want us to do the exam in the car." And I immediately said, and I was supposed to be the technician that was going to like get the history and basically triage that patient. And I before anyone said anything, I went, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't do that. I will not be doing that.
I
So
don't
if
do
that
that.
is something that you guys do, I will not be the technician triaging this patient. And then they looked at me and they're like, "Yeah, no, we don't do that." And I'm like, "Okay." Like, okay. I'm glad that you guys are on the same page as me because I immediately, I mean, no hesitation. I was like, "No, I personally, I do not feel comfortable with that. I'm not doing that."
Yeah. And so you have all that like laid out in your contract.
Mhm.
Do you feel like maybe you go through your contract every couple months based on experiences and you update it? You're like, "Ooh, I went through this bad experience. Let me update my
I
contract."
have I've updated it one time, and it wasn't even a bad experience. It was just I noticed that there were a couple times where people were like, it was slow and people were giving me the option to leave early. And I was like, I mean, no, because I drove all this way. I'm not going to leave early. I'm here, but I'm also working. Like, even when they were slow, I was cleaning or, if I'm with a contracted clinic that I'm not getting paid out by the hour and I'm getting paid out by the shift, I'm working no matter what, whether it's slow or not. I'm mopping, I'm sweeping, I'm cleaning things. So it's not like I'm not working. Where I was like, well, I didn't have it on my contract that if I did leave early, I wasn't going to get paid for the full day. So I changed that. But overall, I've had really good experiences. I've been really lucky so far. And I've listened to a lot of other relief staff and their bad experiences. And I'm like, oh gosh, I hope that doesn't happen to me. But, which I'm sure it will one day. But
Oh yeah.
I just haven't had that experience. And thankfully, like I said, I've had really, really good experiences and vice versa. I've gotten really good feedback from the clinics that I'm contracted with through my LLC. So, but I know that I don't put up with disrespect. So I would probably be really quick to cut off if I had bad experience. You know what I mean?
Any reason. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
feel like you have a contract that outlines what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. So I
hmm
feel like that is going to help
Like
set you up
I'm
for
not going to practice
success.
outside of my
Yeah.
scope.
Yeah.
And so don't ask me to do things. I mean, because I'm sure there's been times where doctors have had technicians do things that they weren't legally within their scope of
Supposed to do.
practice, and I I don't do that. I mean, ever since I was a baby tech, I'd have doctors ask me to do things that I didn't feel comfortable with, and I would tell them no. I would say no because that's illegal, and I would say no because I don't feel comfortable. And doctors did not like me because of that. I was not a yes girl, and I still am not a yes girl. And people I mean, I
They
was a
don't
yes
like that.
girl. I was a yes girl as far as like, hey, can you pick up this shift? Hey, can you stay longer? I was a yes girl in that aspect. But in the aspect of if I don't feel comfortable doing this, then I'm not going to do it. And you're not going to push me to do it either.
Yeah. Because I mean, yeah, that's respectable because if you mess up, you could cause loss of life for an animal.
Yeah.
Like, that's huge for
Yeah.
you to not be pushed into something that you're not comfortable doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen that too much. I did work at a clinic, way back in the day, and because our doctor was, like, 85 years old, and he was just trying to sell that practice so bad to anybody, the techs ran the show, and I remember there was times where I'm like, "I don't think we should be doing this," and
Yeah.
uh, the awesome techs there. I still have a lot of respect for those, ladies who I worked with, but damn, there was some stuff I was like, "I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not losing my license today." You set yourself up for success by creating that contract because then you're not gonna put yourself in those situations where a DVM or an office manager is asking you to do something, you're like, "Nope, it's in my contract, I won't do it. Let's move
Right.
on."
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good on you.
Exactly.
You are an inspiration. It took me a long time to start even doing an onboarding form. I didn't think to do that in the beginning. I would just be like, "Hi, Michelle, I'm
Well, I
coming over to your
definitely
house." Yeah.
had people mentor me. I had a VA who she had her own business. And she mentored me and told me contract, contract, contract. And then Jacqueline, same thing. So I definitely had a lot of help along the way. And I did like a lot of research before I even delved into it. So I knew contract was something that was going to be really important to start with. So,
Yeah. Yep. And I just accidentally rolled into my business, so I had no contracts. It took,
well, you also didn't have
years.
you to begin with. Like, you didn't
Yeah.
have your vet tech unattached group. You had to learn everything. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't
I
say that.
just
Like,
yeah.
I had a lot more help than you did. So,
Yeah, I learned
because you
as
are
I
the
made
help.
mistakes. I learned as I was going. It was like, "Oh, shoot, this happened. Well, to prevent this, I should let any future clients know that they cannot or they can or need to do this."
Right.
Like, I learned through trial and error, and I'm
Yeah.
still updating my onboarding form. I just updated it 3 months ago to tell people, "Hey, let's have your TVs down quietly when I come in because I'm not going to be screaming over the news to
Oh,
talk to you." Like,
gosh.
just simple
Yeah.
stuff like that to
Uh-huh.
make it better. Like, I just added that. I'm like, mainly the boomer generation, bless
Volume
their hearts.
control.
Yes, and I'm like, come on, I don't want to scream over the news broadcaster, like, shut the fucker off. So again, learning as I was going, I didn't
Yeah.
have any resources. I just jumped in and was like, well, I'm just going to roll with it. So when you were like, I walked in with contracts, I think that's very commendable. And you said you had a VA help you?
Yeah, it was a vet assistant that ended up helping me, and she mentored me, and I had called her, and she had told me a bunch of stuff of what she did in her business. I don't think she had an LLC, but I think that but she basically did the same thing, so she helped me a lot as well.
All right, so that wraps it up for today. Hopefully, some of the advice that me and Jen gave you is going to help you out to say goodbye to a clinic or goodbye to a client. If you have any questions, as always, we are here. And then, as always, we like to close out a show with the dedication. And this week, it is Jen's turn to dedicate this episode to somebody who has made a difference in her life.
Okay, so I want to dedicate this episode to my husband just because he has been so supportive throughout this whole entire process and just with the whole podcasting situation. And he's just been really, really great. Like, he's really, really good too, like whenever I have to record, and he's really good at keeping the dogs quiet when they need to stay quiet. And he's just been a huge, huge support. And I know that I wouldn't even be doing this podcast without his encouragement and his support. And I wouldn't even have my own business if it wasn't for him, just because he has been so encouraging, and he believes in me like like your mother would believe in you, and I don't have that. So that's who
Same.
he is for me.
I get that.
So and he's just been a huge blessing in my life. So that's who I want to dedicate this episode to.
Yes, we adore Jen's husband, and I hear a lot about her husband that y'all don't hear. He sounds like a wonderful, wonderful guy. I just want to put that out there. Every time you tell me a story about your husband, I'm just like, if we could clone this man, there would
I
be like
know.
no single women on this planet.
Yeah, you're definitely not the
Yeah.
first one that has said that. Yes, he's amazing. He obviously he's his parents have a lot to do with that. He was raised very, very well. He was raised to take care and respect and cherish his woman, and that's exactly what he does. So I'm very, very lucky.
Yes. And on that note, next time I'll have to dedicate mine to my husband.
Oh my gosh. You can do whatever you want. You're an independent woman.
I was going to do my cat that passed away, but now I do my husband.
Oh my gosh.
Your husband, he does sound terrific, Jen, though. You got a good one. So, yes, this
I
is
did.
definitely...
Had to dig through the slums to get to him, but
yeah,
I got to him eventually.
Eventually, we all get there. Yes, it takes a lot of frogs before we get to that prince. So don't give up, everybody.
Right? Yep.
So,
all right, you guys. We will see you guys next time. Thank you for listening.
bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to Endless Journeys, the VetTech Odyssey podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and found some valuable insights. If you did, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave us a review and let us know what you think. You can also connect with us on all social media platforms at Endless Journeys, the VetTech Odyssey podcast. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep making a positive impact in the veterinary world. We need you guys. Have a great day.